Y con nuestra última ponencia de esta tercera jornada de lingüística y literatura inglesas, damos la bienvenida a Karinnette Valenzuela, Masters in English Linguistics in Stockholm University, MCS in Developmental Linguistics en Edinburgh University. Ella nos presenta the effect of proficiency versus proficiency in Spanish English bilinguals.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. I know it's late and I'll try to be as clear as possible. So the title is a little complicated, so I'm going to try to wrap it up before I actually go on in the details of my study. This is something that I co-authored with two of my fellow classmates at Edinburgh University last year. Marilyn Long from the USA and Jasmine Liang Yu from Taiwan, okay? And I'm here to represent because they are not here in Chile. So, okay, let's go back to the title. The effect of proficiency on relative close processing in Spanish-English bilinguals. What I'm trying to do here with my classmates was to tackle the problem of second language acquisition and how learning a second language and being proficient at it can affect your understanding of your own native language. So, yes, the topic of adult second language acquisition and processing has been of great interest in the last couple of decades. And it has shown that certain areas of the language processing tend to present more difficulties at advanced proficiency levels. For example, an English speaker of Spanish as an L2 can use pronouns too much and say, for example, yo hago esto, yo hice lo otro, él está aquí. But native Spanish speakers omit the pronoun, right? So there is optionality, but this optionality not only shows when you speak a second language. Optionality can also be seen when you in the way you can understand your own language once you have established another language in your mind, in your cognitive, in your cognition. So when this happens, the speaker can experience something called attrition. Attrition refers to the modification or even loss of some aspects of a speaker's L1 due to their extensive use of their L2. This happens mainly with immigrants. Immigrants suppress their L1 for such a long time that some aspects of it are just working differently than a monolingual who never left his or her country of origin. Yes, for example, I have noticed that some of my fellow colleagues use the word eventualmente in the way that is understood in English. So that's a sign of attrition because it means that you change the meaning of a word due to semantic extension of the knowledge you have of the second language. Not only with lexical items this happens, it also happens with the way you process the syntax of your mother tongue. In the cases of syntactic ambiguity, I'm going to illustrate this. So we have here, I assume all of us here are speakers of Spanish as our native tongue at an advanced level of English. So what do you think ¿qué means in this sentence? Tengo una polola que es la hija del dueño de un centro comercial que me hizo un pituto. So who is ¿qué referring to? ¿La hija del dueño de un centro comercial? Or el dueño de un centro comercial? Anybody? ¿El dueño? Okay. So actually, if you think el dueño, then you're thinking like an English native speaker, because native English speakers, they attach the relative pronoun to the noun phrase that is closest to the pronoun, whereas Spanish speakers tend to attach tend to make the connection between the pronoun and the whole clause. Okay, so what is closest, I will be calling it low attachment, and what is further away, I'll be calling it high attachment. So this study arises because, well, it arises as a response to a particular study. It's the Dussias and Sagarra 2007 study. They observed that a lengthy immersion in an L2 environment can directly affect L1 processing in terms of syntactic parsing. So what I just showed before, they say that what really is affecting this decision making, this preference, is the time you spend at a foreign culture, where L2 is spoken. Yes. We have some comments or objections to this study. Very quickly, I'm going to describe what this study was about. So in this study, subjects were tested on the speed at which they read and answered questions of a text with ambiguous sentences. Their only variable was time of exposure, where they identified 3 groups: Spanish speakers living in the US for an average of 7 years, Spanish speakers living in the US for an average of 8 months, and a Spanish monolingual control group. Well, finally, they conclude that Group 1 favored relative clause attachment preferred by native English speakers. What we didn't like about the study was that they say that mere exposure to L2's culture or linguistic environment affects the way that we process our L1. Also, the authors did not account for proficiency levels among the subjects. Actually, they asked the subjects to rate themselves, and all of them said that they had a good proficiency level. They were all advanced, and they were okay with this. So, we wanted to see the effects of proficiency as a variable in this preference, how you interpret ambiguous sentences like the one that I showed you. Yes. So we tested whether proficiency is a cause of L1 permeability as opposed to length of exposure, which the other study was all about. So what we did was to test some people who were native speakers of Spanish and had English as a second language. We tested 39, but only 18 were included in the analysis just because of information. The other ones didn't provide us with enough information. So finally, we got a reduced group of 18 participants, 4 males, 14 females from Colombia, Chile, Mexico, and Spain, aged 24 and 36. I have to mention all of them were, some of them were students, not at an English related program, and the ones who weren't studying were just working. Yes, so length of exposure was not an issue or a variable in my study because they only had been living at an English-speaking community for an average of 9 months. And they were divided into 3 equal groups according to proficiency level. Okay, so we have the advanced, the upper intermediate, and the lower intermediate. And we asked them to report their proficiency levels according to standard tests, such as the TOEFL or the IELTS. And we kind of translated those results into these, which are the more standard ones. So what did we do? We used an online survey that took approximately 30 minutes to finish. To motivate them to participate, we told them that we were going to randomly select a winner, and that we gave the winner a £15 voucher for books. Subjects were asked to report how long they had been living in an English-speaking country and their level of English supported by a standardized test. Then they read a made-up text about Spanish immigration to Latin America and the dialectal differences between both places. Of course, this was a disguise. We weren't interested in their opinions about Latin America, Spanish immigration. We wanted to know how they interpreted these weird clauses. Yes, the text has many lexical items, both from Peninsular and Latin American Spanish, in order for the subjects not to focus too much on the ambiguous sentences. There are a total of 4 ambiguous complex relative clauses in the text. This is one of them. So, el otro día estaba hablando con el hermano de un amigo de la oficina que ya había comprado una casa en Gijón cuando se quedó sin curro. Next one. Lo que siempre me cuenta mi mamá es de la crisis de su época cuando sus padres se fueron a Barcelona con el compadre de mi tío Carlos, que encima era discapacitado. Primero hay que coger el metro para luego tomar la micro al lado de Baquedano, que queda entre Santiago Centro y Providencia, y la otra que ya había mostrado antes. So, after they read the text, subjects were asked to answer 10 comprehension questions about the text. 4 of these questions elicited responses to the ambiguous relative clauses. And the others were just fillers. So, the questions were: Clara habla en una casa en Gijón. ¿Quién era el dueño? ¿Qué es lo que hay entre Santiago Centro y Providencia? ¿Por qué Manuel tiene que ir ahí? Okay, so we had a between groups design, and we did a one-way ANOVA. That's the most standard statistical test that you do. And it showed a significant effect on proficiency group. So that number shows significance. And we found that the higher the proficiency level, the more likely they are to attach the relative clause to the lower NP, as English monolinguals do. So here we've got a graph that shows this more clearly. So we've got the advanced group, clearly preferred to attach the relative clause to the lower NP, and then the upper intermediates, they behaved both ways, and the lower intermediates behaved as Spanish monolinguals do. So our results argue against Dussias and Sagarra, who claim that only extensive immersion in an L2 environment influences syntactic parsing in L1, and that proficiency plays no role. Our results are not controversial, in the sense that we show once more that cross-linguistic influences are inevitable. However, we found that length of immersion is not the only factor that triggers RC attachment or relative clause attachment preferences. Well, yes, this is important. Our subjects, even the ones who were proficient, especially the ones who were proficient, they learned English in the classroom and mostly had non-native input. So how come they behave like natives? They were deprived of an authentic L2 environment in the way that the immigrants in the previous study were. So that's interesting. Their lack of exposure to an English linguistic community was too limited to acquire the linguistic traits of L2 only by immersion. Remember, they were there between 7 and 13 months, an average of 9 months. So we think that the advanced group already experienced the effects of attrition and thus unconsciously acquired parsing techniques from L1 and applied them into their L2. Yes. So what happens when a person has a knowledge of two languages well entrenched in their minds? Well, when you have acquired a second language after the first one as an adult, your cognitive resources expand and they become more flexible, and they allow them to solve ambiguity in more than one way. So in this case, advanced L2 speakers used lower attachment, used in English and in many other languages, which is a more universal parsing strategy. So, yeah, on the contrary, what we do as Spanish speakers monolinguals is the other way around. So as Spanish is a flexible, it allows more flexible positions in the sentence. We are used to interpret the relative the relative pronoun as referring to the whole relative clause. Yeah, some limitations of my study, or our study, is that we definitely could have benefited from a more instantaneous tool for measurement. For example, the eye tracking technique, which shows you exactly where the subject is looking at when they are reading. We didn't have that. So yeah, that was a shame. Also, we have to acknowledge that length of exposure and proficiency levels are two variables that might go hand in hand most of the time, and thus are very difficult to tease apart. So we tried to do that, but reality is that it's tricky because we wanted to handle them as two different variables, but I think we did a good job, but in reality you can't tease them apart all the time. Finally, individual parsing techniques may also be caused by your general level of comprehension, your reading skills, or the speed at which you read, and we also did not account that in our study. I'm finished. Finally, for further research, we would really like to carry out a study that includes both length of exposure and proficiency as variables in order to see how these two interact in the way L2 influences L1. And that's it.
Any questions?
Hola, Karinnette.
Hola.
Más que nada un comentario con respecto a la tercera limitación que planteaba, el tema de la cantidad de tiempo que tiene para leer. Me acuerdo que yo participé en un estudio que al parecer estaba testeando lo mismo que el tema de que también con el en inglés. Si era, digamos, la primer sustantivo es más cercano. Y recuerdo que yo utilicé como criterio, porque tenía todo el tiempo como para hacerlo, utilicé como criterio el hecho de que creo que era más o menos ambiguo en términos semánticos. Entonces yo como que reflexioné bastante la respuesta que iba a dar. Puede que a lo mejor en el caso de que ella tenía conocimiento de tiempo, haya tenido una tendencia o otra. Entonces, eso sería interesante ver.
Sí. Y cuando hiciste el estudio ya sabías inglés.
Sí,
con
puede ser poca.
alta proficiencia.
Digamos que el año pasado.
Bueno, eso también es interesante comentarlo porque alguien que sabe otro idioma en un nivel alto es más experienciado, ¿cierto? Uno que tiene menos experiencia es más ingenuo y no va a estar dándole vuelta al asunto tanto. Entonces, sí, justamente puede influir en los resultados.
Sí, bueno, aparte de eso, es que además nosotros acá somos sujetos más piqueados todavía, porque no es solamente que tengamos un nivel X de inglés relativamente avanzado, sino que además el nivel de manejo metalingüístico hace que uno llegue súper preocupado a estas tareas. O sea, actualmente uno va a sentir la ambigüedad, pero además va a tener un cuatro papers encima habiendo leído solo la ambigüedad. Esa es una cosa. Pero otro, respecto al segundo punto de la limitación, ¿por qué se imponen las fichas como el tiempo de exposición? Porque en el fondo, el tiempo de exposición finalmente, a lo único que importa es para lo que le vaya a hacer a la competencia. O sea, lo que puede mostrar en tu estudio finalmente es que neutralizando eso, el proficiency es lo que te marca. Y en el estudio de Dussias y Sagarra, lo que están diciendo actualmente es ocupar el tiempo de exposición como un proxy de proficiency. O sea, lo que están diciendo es como lo más probable es que efectivamente la gente más competente haya dado los resultados que le daban, y eso ha ido claramente correlacionado con el tiempo de permanencia. Pero no el tiempo de permanencia, porque tú puedes permanecer por mucho tiempo y no avanzar en tu competencia. O puedes estar muy poquito tiempo y avanzar. Entonces probablemente puede tener más que ver con el tiempo de exposición, con el tipo de exposición, con la intensidad, si está siendo educado formalmente, si no, etcétera. Entonces, ¿por qué de repente no, que el siguiente estudio no considere esa variable de tiempo, de exposición, pero sí la variable de competencia y cualquier otra variable secundaria probablemente que ayuda a la competencia? La competencia parece ser la misma. Entonces, la pregunta es ¿por qué seguir pensando que el tiempo de permanencia puede ser relevante?
Sí, el tiempo de permanencia, bueno, claramente tiene que ver mucho con lo que tú dijiste de cómo se ocupa ese tiempo de permanencia, y seguramente en eso deberíamos enfocarnos más, o sea, en conjunto junto con el tiempo de permanencia. Sí. Pero también estábamos diciendo, igual surgió como una crítica a eso, porque ellos estaban hablando, y lo otro que nos pareció extraño fue que en ese paper no habían verificado la proficiencia de los hablantes. Sí. Pero gracias por el comentario.
Última pregunta. ¿Sí?
Bueno, justo por decir que no te gustó la presentación. Bueno, tengo una duda, pero a lo mejor tenga que ir por lo mismo que hablan los profesores acá. Porque cuando yo veo estas ambigüedades, ¿cierto?, en estas oraciones, yo pienso que quizás se puede resolver no tanto, o sea, una persona podría quizás tender no buscar, ¿cierto?, una cosa de acuerdo a la posición y ni siquiera, a ver, considerando que tenemos varias noun phrases, ¿no? Podría ser que cada head, digamos, tenga ciertas propiedades semánticas, ¿no? Que más que una cosa de frecuencia de las posibles combinaciones, por la propiedad de cada noun phrase pudiera desarrollarse al pronoun, ¿no? Y cómo evitar cuando que fuera ese sesgo, porque quizá no tenga que ver con la intervención de una lengua, sino con una cuestión del carácter semántico de los noun phrases que están en la síntesis, ¿no?
Ah, ok, eso es otra dimensión, ¿cierto? Yo solamente hablé de la sintaxis, de cómo uno procesa la sintaxis, sin tomar en cuenta lexical meaning. Y a lo mejor, sí, sería interesante, qué bueno que te diste cuenta, sería algo, un plus que se podría explorar. La verdad es que no habíamos pensado en eso.
¿La pregunta? ¿Cómo te has introducido? Bueno, así terminaría la presentación de Karinnette. Por favor, pido una